Billionaire finds his black maid eating grass in the garden, and the reason makes him cry. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin our story. In the lush gardens of a sprawling mansion, hidden away in the quiet corners of an estate that could house entire neighborhoods, a scene unfolded that no one would have ever expected. The billionaire, an imposing figure with a commanding presence, stepped into the garden on a crisp morning. His eyes, trained to observe only the finer details of his luxurious life, fell upon an unusual sight. There, amidst the carefully manicured grass, he saw his maid. She was crouching low to the ground, her hands carefully plucking blades of grass and bringing them to her mouth. At first, he stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. The maid, a young black woman named Maya, seemed completely unaware of his presence. Her eyes were focused, her expression one of deep concentration. The rich, green blades of grass seemed to offer her a strange comfort, as if they were more than just plants. She chewed slowly, deliberately, as if the act of eating grass was part of a ritual only she understood. The billionaire, shocked and confused, stood watching for a few moments, his mind racing with questions. Was she ill? Was she so poor that she had resorted to such desperate measures? As his thoughts churned, he took a few cautious steps toward her, his footsteps muffled by the soft grass beneath his feet. As he approached, Maya finally became aware of his presence. She stood up quickly, her face flushing red with embarrassment. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and the billionaire could see the vulnerability in hers. She quickly wiped her mouth, as if trying to erase any trace of the act she had just performed. He was about to speak when Maya, sensing his judgment, spoke first. "It's not what it looks like," she said softly, her voice trembling. Slightly. The billionaire, still confused, folded his arms across his chest. "Then explain it to me," he demanded, his tone sharp. Maya took a deep breath, her eyes looking down at the ground. "I'm not crazy," she continued, her voice now steadier. "I'm doing this because it helps my mother. She's sick. She's been struggling with an illness that the doctors can't explain, and this grass, it's the only thing that seems to bring her relief." The billionaire's expression softened, but he still couldn't fully grasp the situation. Maya went on to explain that she had found an old remedy passed down through her family, a secret known only to a few. The grass, she believed, had medicinal properties that helped with the pain her mother was suffering. She couldn't afford the treatment her mother needed, but this natural remedy was the only thing she had. Her voice cracked as she spoke of her mother's suffering, and the billionaire, for the first time, felt a pang of guilt for judging her so harshly. Maya looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. "I didn't want anyone to know," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to seem crazy. But my mom, she's everything to me." The billionaire, moved by her words, realized that his perception of the world had been completely wrong. He had judged her without understanding her struggles, and in that moment, he felt a deep sense of shame. He took a step closer to her, his voice softer now. "You're not crazy," he said, his tone sincere. "And I'm sorry for not understanding." For the first time, Maya saw him not as the wealthy, distant man he had always been, but as a human being who, despite his wealth, was capable of empathy. She nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. As the billionaire stood there, looking at her, something inside him shifted. He realized that the wealth and power he had always taken for granted meant nothing compared to the struggles of the people who worked for him. He was not just a man who owned property and business. He was now someone who understood the true value of compassion and sacrifice. In that moment, the billionaire knew that his life, and the way he saw the world, would never be the same. The billionaire stood silently, still processing everything Maya had just shared. His mind was racing, thoughts colliding as he tried to make sense of the situation. He had spent his entire life judging people based on their status, their wealth, and their positions in society. Never once had he paused to consider the struggles that lay hidden beneath the surface. But now, looking at Maya, something had shifted inside him. He had seen the vulnerability in her eyes, and he had heard the raw emotion in her voice. Her words had struck him in a way that nothing ever had before. For the first time in years, he felt small, insignificant. He realized that his wealth and power meant nothing when compared to the sacrifices people like Maya made every day for the ones they loved. I had no idea, he muttered under his breath, more to himself than to her. Maya gave him a small smile, but it was tinged with sadness. Most people don't. But that's okay. You don't have to understand. All I want is for my mother to get better. She wiped a tear from her cheek and turned her gaze back toward the garden, as if to gather her thoughts. The billionaire stood beside her, silently observing her quiet strength. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice softer now. Maya, I want to help. I don't know how, but I want to do something. Maya looked at him, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. You want to help? Why? She asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. The billionaire shifted uncomfortably. Because I've been blind. I spent so many years thinking that money could solve everything. But now I see that it can't. It doesn't fix people. It doesn't fix hearts. He took a deep breath, as if trying to steady himself. Let me help your mother. I can pay for the treatment. I can do more than just give you money. I can find a way to get you the resources you need. No one should have to suffer like this. Maya took a step back, clearly taken aback by his offer. You don't have to do that, she said quietly. I don't want charity. I don't need pity. The billionaire's face softened, and he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. It's not charity, Maya. It's a chance for me to do something. Right for once. It's a chance for me to make up for all the times I turned a blind eye to people who needed help. Maya hesitated, the weight of his words hanging in the air between them. For a moment, she considered refusing him, but she saw something in his eyes, a sincerity, a vulnerability that she had never expected from someone like him. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, she said softly. Thank you. The billionaire smiled, relieved. You're welcome. And just like that, a silent understanding passed between them. It wasn't just about the money or the treatment anymore. It was about something deeper, something that transcended their differences in status and wealth. It was about human connection, empathy, and the power of kindness. As the billionaire stood there, watching Maya return to her work in the garden, he knew that his life was forever changed. He had found a new sense of purpose, one that didn't revolve around his wealth or power, but around something far more valuable, helping others. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. The billionaire's offer to help Maya's mother was met with a quiet acceptance, but there was still a sense of unease hanging in the air. Maya had agreed, but only because she could see the sincerity in his eyes. She wasn't sure if she could trust him just yet. He was a man of power, a man who had everything she could ever dream of, yet he had never truly seen the world from her perspective. Still, as they both stood there in the garden, something had shifted. A small part of Maya began to believe that maybe, just maybe, people like him could change. Over the next few days, the billionaire made good on his promise. He set up a meeting with the best doctors, arranged for treatment, and even offered to have a private caregiver help Maya's mother at home. The first time Maya saw her mother's pain lessen, it was a miracle. The doctors confirmed that the treatments were working. But more than that, the connection between Maya and the billionaire had begun to grow. They talked more, and every conversation revealed something new about the other. The billionaire found himself asking questions he never thought to ask before, about life, about struggles, about love. And Maya, despite her reservations, started to see him not just as the wealthy man who owned everything, but as a man who was trying to make things right. One afternoon, after a long day of meetings, the billionaire walked into the garden, where Maya was tending to the flowers. He watched her for a moment before walking over. "How's your mother?" he asked, his voice casual but concerned. "Better," Maya replied, looking up at him with a small smile. "She's still recovering, but she's eating more, and she's smiling. I don't know how to thank you." The billionaire nodded, though his expression was a mix of humility and something deeper. "You don't need to thank me. I should have done something sooner." There was a long pause between them, and for the first time, the billionaire felt a sense of discomfort, a feeling of guilt that he wasn't used to. "Maya, I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what you've been through," he said quietly, "but I know that I want to keep helping. If you need anything, anything at all, You just have to ask. Maya looked at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity, but all she saw was a man who had been changed by the same kindness he had shown her. Thank you, she said softly. I appreciate it more than you know. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but beneath the surface, both of them knew that something had begun to change between them. It wasn't just about the money or the treatment anymore. It was about the bond they were forming, a connection that went beyond wealth and status. As the weeks went by, Maya's mother continued to improve, and the billionaire found himself spending more time with her, not just as an employer, but as a friend. They shared stories about their past, their dreams, and the things that mattered most to them. Maya began to see him in a new light. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man who was capable of kindness, a man who was capable of change. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset, the billionaire turned to Maya. You know, he began, his voice thoughtful. I used to think that having everything meant you had it all. But now I realize that the things I've been chasing, money, power, success, they don't really matter. What matters is the people we help, the lives we touch, and the love we give. And I want to make sure I do that from now on. Maya looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. In that moment, she knew that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Their story wasn't over, not by a long shot. It had only just begun. Maya could hardly believe what was happening. The past few weeks had felt like a whirlwind. Her mother was improving. The billionaire's help was nothing short of life-changing, and she was starting to see the world through a new lens. Despite everything that had happened, she couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that this man, a billionaire, was willing to change his life to help hers. As the days passed, she found herself talking to him more, sharing stories of her childhood, her struggles, and her dreams for the future. In turn, he opened up to her as well. He shared the weight of his family legacy, the pressure to always be perfect, and the loneliness that came with being at the top. It was a connection neither of them had expected, but one they both needed. One afternoon, as Maya was walking through the garden, she heard the familiar sound of the billionaire's footsteps approaching. She turned to see him holding a cup of coffee in his hand, a rare sight for him. He usually preferred his work over anything else. I thought you might like some company, he said with a warm smile. She chuckled softly. You know, I used to think all you cared about was your business and making money. But now I'm starting to see a different side of you. He raised an eyebrow, playfully. Is that so? And what do you think of it? Maya smiled. I think I like it. You're not just the billionaire anymore. You're a person, someone who cares. I never expected that. The billionaire paused for a moment, his gaze softening. I didn't expect to be here, either. I didn't expect to care about anything other than the bottom line. But meeting you, and seeing what you've been through, it made me realize I was missing something important. Something money can't buy. Maya's smile faded as she looked down at her hands. I'm just trying to help my mom. She's been through so much, and I'm the only one who can do anything for her. But even with your help, I don't know if I can ever repay you for everything you've done. The billionaire reached out and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. You don't need to repay me, Maya. You're already doing something far more important than anything money could offer. You're giving me a chance to make a difference in someone's life. That's more than enough. Maya looked up at him, her heart full. It had been a long time since someone had shown her such kindness, and even longer since she had allowed herself to accept help. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The billionaire smiled. It's the least I could do, and you don't have to face this alone. From that moment, the dynamic between them shifted once again. The lines between employer and employee blurred, replaced by something deeper, something that transcended their differences. They were two people, connected by shared experiences, both trying to make sense of their lives. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to feel something other than gratitude. She felt hope. For her mother, for herself, and for the future. As they sat together in the garden, the billionaire glanced at Maya, his eyes filled with a quiet determination. I want to do more, he said, almost to himself. Maya raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He met her gaze, a fire in his eyes. I want to start a foundation. One that helps people like you. People who just need a little help to get back on their feet. I want to use my resources to make the world a better place, not just for the rich, but for everyone. Maya's eyes widened in surprise. You're serious? The billionaire nodded. Absolutely. I've spent so many years accumulating wealth, but I've never thought about using it to change lives until now. I can't go back to the way things were. Maya felt a lump form in her throat as she took in his words. This was more than just a gesture. It was a promise, a commitment to something bigger than both of them. That sounds amazing, she said, her voice filled with awe. But how are we going to make it happen? The billionaire smiled. One step at a time. And we'll start with you. Your story, your journey. It's the beginning of something great. For the first time in her life, Maya felt as if she was part of something bigger than herself. She wasn't just a maid or a daughter struggling to make ends meet. She was a catalyst for change, and together, they could make a difference. As the days passed, Maya's life slowly began to transform. With her mother's health improving, she found herself finally able to breathe again, to focus on something other than survival. And the billionaire, whose name had once been just a distant echo in her mind, was now a constant presence in her life. Their relationship had shifted from employer and employee to something that felt more like a partnership, built on mutual respect and understanding. It wasn't just about the foundation anymore. It was about how their lives were intertwined, how they could help each other grow. Maya had always kept to herself, carrying the weight of the world without asking for help. But now, with the billionaire by her side, she was learning that it was okay to lean on someone. That vulnerability didn't make her weak. And for him, Maya had become the reminder he needed to stay grounded. His wealth and status had always shielded him from the world, but she had opened his eyes to a different reality, one where compassion and empathy mattered more than power and control. One afternoon, Maya was sitting in the garden, reading a book while her mother rested inside. She had just finished a long phone call with the doctors, and things were looking even brighter for her mother's future. The billionaire arrived, as usual, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might need a break," he said with a smile, handing her one of the cups. Maya laughed softly, accepting the coffee. "You always know when I need something." "I try," he replied, sitting down beside her. They sat in silence for a while, both enjoying the quiet and the peacefulness of the garden. But soon, the billionaire broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other day," he said, his voice more serious than usual. "About the foundation. I want to make it happen, Maya. I want to take this beyond just helping your family. I want to help as many people as we can. But I need your help." Maya looked up at him, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" "I need you to help me shape the foundation," he said. "You've lived this life. You know what people need. You know how to listen, how to truly understand. I can give the resources, but you know how to reach people. I want your voice in this. I want you to help me build something that really makes a difference." Maya was taken aback. She had never imagined herself in such a position, but now that it was being offered to her, she could see how much it mattered. She had always been the one to fight for what her family needed, to push through the hardest times. But now, with the billionaire's offer, she saw the chance to do something far greater. "I don't know what to say," she said quietly. "This is huge." He smiled, his eyes filled with hope. "Just say yes. You're not alone in this, Maya. We can do this together." She sat back, her mind racing. This was her chance to make a real change, to use her story and her strength to help others. And as she looked at the billionaire beside her, she realized that they had both come so far from where they started. They had both found something in each other that was worth fighting for. After a long pause, Maya finally spoke. "Okay, I'll help you. We'll make it happen." The billionaire's face lit up with a genuine smile, the weight of his decision finally lifting. "Thank you, Maya. This is just the beginning." And with that, they began to discuss the details of the foundation, dreaming of the lives they could change, the people they could help, and the future they could build together. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about creating something meaningful, something that would last long after they were gone. And for the first time in his life, the billionaire felt truly fulfilled. The foundation was officially launched in a small, but meaningful ceremony that included just a few close friends and colleagues. Maya stood beside the billionaire, both of them beaming with pride. It wasn't just about the money or the grand gestures. It was about giving people the tools they needed to change their lives, and that meant everything to both of them. As the foundation began to take shape, Maya found herself in an unfamiliar role, one that required her to lead, to make decisions, and to inspire others. It was a role she never thought she would occupy, yet here she was, in the center of something that could change the lives of many people. For the billionaire, it was a project that gave him purpose beyond his wealth. He had spent his entire life chasing after success, but now, standing beside Maya, he understood what it truly meant to make a difference. They worked tirelessly to bring the foundation's mission to life, helping those who had been overlooked, offering opportunities to those who needed a helping hand. But it wasn't always easy. There were challenges along the way, from navigating the complexities of bureaucracy to ensuring that every donation was used wisely. But through it all, Maya remained steadfast, and the billionaire found that he was learning from her more than he ever could have imagined. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings, the billionaire found himself in the garden again, the place where so much had changed for him. Maya was there, as usual, tending to the plants. He had come to appreciate the quiet moments in the garden, where everything felt simpler, more peaceful. "How's everything going?" Maya asked without looking up, sensing his presence. He sat down beside her, feeling the weight of the day's work pressing down on him. "It's going well, but it's exhausting. I don't think I realized just how much it takes to run something like this. There's always something that needs to be done." Maya smiled softly, not a hint of judgment in her expression. "It's worth it though, right?" she asked, her voice gentle. "You're making a difference." The billionaire nodded slowly, looking out at the garden. "I never thought I'd find anything worth fighting for like this. All these years, I was focused on building my empire, but now, this is what feels important. Helping others." Maya didn't say anything for a moment, letting the silence settle between them. Then she spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "I think we're both learning something new. I never thought I'd be in a position to help so many people. And you never thought you'd be the one giving back." The billionaire chuckled, the sound light and genuine. "You're right. I guess I've had to unlearn a lot of things. But I'm glad I'm learning them." Now, there was another pause, and then Maya turned to face him. "I never would have imagined that things would turn out like this. I thought I was just doing what I had to do to survive. But now, with everything that's happening, I feel like I'm part of something much bigger than myself. And it's because of you." The billionaire's expression softened. He hadn't expected that, but hearing her words made him realize just how much they had both grown. "We've both come a long way," he said quietly. "But there's still so much more to do." They sat together in the garden, the evening sky turning shades of purple and orange as the sun set. In that quiet moment, both of them knew that this was just the beginning. The journey ahead wouldn't always be easy, but together, they could make the world a better place, one step at a time. Weeks turned into months, and the foundation grew, reaching more and more people in need. Maya and the billionaire had become a team, one that worked tirelessly together to bring change. Their bond, once built on charity, had evolved into something deeper, a partnership grounded in shared values and mutual respect. The billionaire had never imagined that he would find fulfillment in something other than his wealth, but here he was, fully invested in something that would change the lives of countless others. Yet, despite their progress, the work was never done. There were always more people to help, more challenges to face. One late evening, as the billionaire reviewed some paperwork in his office, Maya walked in, holding a letter. Her face was pale, her usual calm demeanor replaced with an expression of concern. "What's wrong?" the billionaire asked, sensing the tension in the room. Maya handed him the letter. "It's from one of the families we've been helping. They've lost everything, again. Their house was foreclosed. They have nowhere to go." The billionaire took the letter, reading it carefully. His heart sank as he processed the words. He had seen firsthand how difficult it was for people to escape the cycle of poverty, and this family story was all too familiar. Maya continued, her voice shaky. "They've been trying so hard to get back on their feet, but the system keeps pushing them down. I don't know what else we can do." The billionaire stood up, walking over to the window, deep in thought. "This isn't just about giving money," he said finally. "It's about breaking the system that keeps people trapped. We need to find a way to change the system." Maya's eyes widened as she processed his words. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been doing great work, but we need to go bigger. We need to tackle the root causes of these issues, not just put a band-aid on them. It's time to change the way people think about poverty, about the way we treat the most vulnerable in our society." Maya was silent for a moment, taking in the weight of his words. The billionaire's determination was palpable, and she knew he was right. This wasn't just about charity. It was about justice, about creating long-lasting change. "You're right. Maya said, her voice steady. But it's going to take more than just us. We need to get other people on board, people with power, influence, and the will to make real change. The billionaire turned to face her, his eyes filled with resolve. Then that's what we'll do. We'll build a coalition. We'll use everything we have to change the way things work. It's not going to be easy, but we can't stop now. Not when there's so much more to be done. Maya smiled, her confidence returning. I'm with you, every step of the way. As the billionaire looked at her, he realized that this was no longer just about helping others. It was about a shared vision, a future where people like Maya and her family no longer had to struggle to survive. It was about taking the power that came with wealth and using it to level the playing field. And together, they would do whatever it took to make that vision a reality. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in his life, the billionaire felt ready to face it. With Maya by his side, he knew that anything was possible. The following weeks were filled with meetings, phone calls, and late nights as Maya and the billionaire worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They reached out to influential people, including politicians, philanthropists, and community leaders, all with one goal in mind: to create a system that would empower those who had been left behind. Despite their progress, the challenges they faced were monumental. The system that had kept people in poverty for generations was not something that could be dismantled overnight. It required not just money, but the courage to confront deeply ingrained beliefs about class, race, and opportunity. One evening, as Maya and the billionaire sat in his office, going over proposals, Maya looked up from the papers in front of her, her eyes reflecting the exhaustion of the past few months. "Do you think we can really change things?" she asked, her voice heavy with doubt. The billionaire paused, setting down the papers. "I have to believe we can," he said, his voice firm. "We've already started changing lives. We've seen it with your mother, and we've seen it with the families we've helped. This is just the beginning. The harder part is convincing others that it's worth fighting for." Maya nodded slowly. "It's just that the world isn't kind to people like us. I grew up learning that the system was designed to keep us down, and even with all the support we've gotten, I can't help but feel like we're swimming against the tide." The billionaire looked at her, understanding in his eyes. "I know," he said softly. "I used to think the same way. But sometimes, change comes in waves. It starts small, and then it builds. We just have to keep pushing, even when it feels impossible." They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their thoughts. The weight of their mission was starting to sink in. It wasn't just about the foundation anymore. It was about changing an entire system, a system that had been entrenched for so long that it felt like an insurmountable mountain. But then, something unexpected happened. The billionaire received a call from one of the foundation's partners. "We've secured a major grant," the voice on the other end said. "It's more than we ever expected. This is a game changer." Maya's eyes widened. "This could be it," she whispered. "This is the break we've been waiting for." The billionaire smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "It's not just the money," he said, hanging up the phone. "It's the support. People are starting to see what we're doing, and they want to be a part of it." In the following days, the momentum grew. More partners joined the cause, and more communities were reached. The tide was slowly turning, and Maya and the billionaire found themselves at the helm of a movement that was gaining traction. They had always known that change wouldn't come easily, but they hadn't realized just how powerful the ripple effect could be. As they stood together in front of a crowd at a charity event, Maya looked at the billionaire beside her, a sense of awe washing over her. "We're really doing this," she said, her voice full of wonder. The billionaire nodded, his expression filled with determination. "Yes," he said, "and we won't stop until we've changed everything." The road ahead was still long, and there were many battles to fight, but for the first time, Maya felt a sense of hope for the future. They had started something that could, in time, change the world, and together, they were ready to see it through. As the months passed, the momentum behind their mission continued to grow. Maya and the billionaire were no longer just working side by side. They were a powerful team, tackling issues that had once seemed impossible to overcome. The foundation had expanded, reaching new communities and offering resources to those who needed it the most. But with success came new challenges. The bigger their impact, the more resistance they faced from those who benefited from the old system. Maya could feel the weight of the work they were doing. It was no longer just about helping one family, one individual. It was about a whole system that needed to be restructured. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Maya sat in the office, staring at a pile of reports. The foundation had received more donations than they had ever imagined, but there was still so much to do. Despite all the progress, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still fighting an uphill battle. The billionaire entered the room, his face showing the same signs of exhaustion. "How's it going?" he asked, sitting down across from her. Maya sighed, rubbing her eyes. "It's going, but it's a lot. We're making a difference, but the deeper we get, the more I realize how big this problem really is. It's not just about giving people food or shelter anymore. It's about changing policies, about changing people's beliefs." The billionaire nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I know. The more we push, the more people push back. But that's what change looks like, right? Resistance. We just have to keep moving forward, even when it feels like we're not getting anywhere." Maya looked at him, seeing the same resolve in his eyes. "I just wish it wasn't so hard. Sometimes it feels like the world isn't ready for this kind of change." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights in the distance. "The world will never be ready. Change doesn't wait for permission. It comes when people like us refuse to back down. We've already made an impact. The people who need this will find us." Maya felt a surge of hope in his words. She had always been the one fighting for her family, for her community, but now, with the billionaire by her side, she realized they were fighting for everyone. They weren't just trying to change lives, they were changing the world. Later that week, they received an invitation to a conference on social justice, where they were asked to speak about their foundation and their mission. Maya felt a mix of excitement and nerves as they prepared for the event. This was their chance to reach even more people, to expand their vision even further. The day of the conference arrived, and as they stood in front of a packed room, Maya looked at the billionaire, who gave her a reassuring nod. She stepped up to the podium first, her heart racing, but the words came easily. "When we started this foundation, we had one goal, to help people. But as we've grown, we've realized something even more important. Change isn't just about giving people what they need. It's about empowering them to take control of their own futures." She paused, scanning the room. "We've seen firsthand how the system can crush people's spirits, how it can strip them of their dignity. But we've also seen how a little support, a little hope, can change everything. And that's what we're here to do. Give people hope, and give them the tools to build a better future." As she spoke, she could see the impact her words were having on the audience. There was a shift in the room, a sense of possibility in the air. She had always thought of herself as just a woman from a poor background, but standing there, speaking to so many people, she realized she was part of something much bigger. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a catalyst for change. After the speech, the billionaire stood beside her, his face filled with pride. "You did great," he said, his voice warm. Maya smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. They had come so far, but there was still so much more to do. As they left the conference, Maya looked at the billionaire, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. I never could have done this without you." He smiled, putting a hand on her shoulder. "We did this together, and we'll keep doing it, no matter how hard it gets." The road ahead was uncertain, but with each passing day, they were proving that change was possible. They were on the right path, and together, they could overcome anything. As the months continued to pass, Maya and the billionaire grew even closer. Their partnership had transformed from an unlikely alliance into a friendship built on trust and mutual respect. The foundation, once just a dream, was now a thriving movement, reaching people in ways they had never thought possible. But as they continued to push forward, new obstacles began to surface, challenges that neither of them had anticipated. Despite the growing support and success of the foundation, they found themselves up against powerful opponents who had benefited from the status quo. Maya knew that change wouldn't come easily, but she didn't expect the resistance to be so fierce. One day, after a particularly tense meeting with one of their largest donors, the billionaire sat in his office, looking over the contract details. Maya stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline. She could see the weight of the situation in his eyes, the exhaustion that had begun to take its toll. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice gentle but laced with concern. The billionaire looked up, a sigh escaping his lips. "I've been thinking about our next steps. We're making progress, but the people in power are fighting us every step of the way. They don't want this change. They don't want to give up their control. And it's not just about money anymore. It's about something deeper, something they're not willing to lose. Maya turned to face him, her expression hardening. So what are we going to do? Just let them win. The billionaire shook his head. No, we can't. But it's going to take more than just us. We need to get more people involved. People who can help us push back. We need a bigger movement, one that can't be ignored. Maya stepped forward, determination setting in her voice. Then let's build it. Let's find the people who will stand with us and make them listen. We're not giving up. Not now. As the days went by, Maya and the billionaire worked together to rally support from all corners of society. They reached out to local leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens, all of whom had a stake in the fight for justice. Slowly, their movement began to gain momentum. The billionaire, once a man focused solely on his own success, found himself giving speeches, attending rallies, and meeting with people from all walks of life. He had become a voice for the voiceless, a champion for those who had been left behind. But it wasn't without its cost. The pressure was building. Maya could see it in his face. The billionaire had always been used to control, to having everything in his life carefully orchestrated. But now, with the foundation and the movement, he was facing a chaos he hadn't known before. One evening, as they sat in his office after a long day of meetings, Maya spoke up. I can see it. You're burning out. You're pushing yourself too hard. The billionaire looked at her, a wry smile crossing his face. I've always been a workaholic, Maya. I've spent my whole life building this empire. But now, this feels different. I don't want to stop. I can't. Maya walked over to his desk, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. You don't have to do this alone. We're in this together, remember? You've given everything you have to this cause. But you need to take a step back sometimes, too. You need to take care of yourself. The billionaire stared at the papers in front of him for a long moment, then nodded. I've always been the one in charge. But you're right. I can't do this alone. Thank you, Maya. She smiled softly. That's what I'm here for. We've built something incredible, and we can't let it fall apart because we're too tired to keep going. We'll get through this, together. As they sat in the quiet of the office, the weight of their mission still heavy on their shoulders, both of them knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The fight for justice was far from over, and there would be more challenges to face. But with each other's support, they were ready to continue the work they had started. The billionaire, once a man driven solely by profit, had become a man driven by something greater. The desire to create a world where people like Maya and her family no longer had to struggle. And together, they would make sure that vision became a reality. As the days passed, the momentum behind their movement continued to build, but so did the challenges. Maya and the billionaire had accomplished so much, but they knew they were now up against forces much larger than themselves. The resistance they faced was no longer just from a few powerful individuals. It was an entire system that had been entrenched for generations. Despite the support they had garnered, it seemed that for every step forward, they were pulled 2 steps back. One evening, as they sat in the conference room reviewing new data on their outreach programs, Maya looked up from the papers, her face tense with concern. The pushback is getting worse, she said quietly. I've seen more articles questioning what we're doing. There are people out there who don't want us to succeed. They're spreading misinformation, trying to undermine everything we've built. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping thoughtfully against the desk. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but this is more than I expected. It's frustrating, but we can't let them control the narrative. We have to keep going, even when they try to tear us down. Maya nodded but remained silent for a moment, her eyes scanning the reports in front of her. I didn't realize how deep the resistance ran. I thought we were making a difference, but now I feel like we're just scratching the surface. The billionaire's gaze softened as he stood up and walked over to the window. It's going to take time, he said quietly, his voice calm. Change is never easy, and it's never fast. But we've already made an impact. Look at how far we've come. Look at how many lives we've touched. We can't let a few obstacles stop us now. Maya stood up, walking over to join him at the window. The city lights sparkled below, a reminder of just how much was at stake. You're right, she said, her voice steady with newfound resolve. We've come this far, and we've built something that's bigger than both of us. We can't stop now. They stood in silence for a moment, letting the weight of their words settle between them. Both of them knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but the fire that had been ignited within them, both for the cause and for each other, was not something they were willing to extinguish. As the days turned into weeks, they continued their work, reaching more communities, rallying more supporters, and pushing against the resistance. It wasn't without sacrifice. The pressure of constantly being under scrutiny took its toll. The billionaire, who had once lived in a world where everything was controlled, found himself grappling with the unpredictability of their movement. Maya, on the other hand, found herself becoming more of a public figure than she had ever anticipated. She had always fought for her family in silence, but now her voice was being heard by thousands. One day, after a particularly difficult meeting, Maya was walking down the hallway of their office when she was stopped by a reporter. "Maya," the reporter called, rushing toward her. "How do you respond to accusations that your foundation is creating more division in the community? That it's making people feel even more alienated?" Maya stopped in her tracks, a rush of frustration building inside her. She had heard the same accusations before. It was always the same. People afraid of the change they couldn't control. "I respond by saying this," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We're not dividing anyone. We're offering an opportunity for people who have been ignored, who have been left behind. We're giving them a voice, and we're giving them the power to change their own lives. If that feels like division to you, then maybe you need to take a closer look at what real unity means." The reporter stood there, caught off guard by her response, but Maya didn't wait for a reply. She walked away, her head held high. Later that evening, as she sat at home reflecting on the day, the billionaire called. "I heard what you said to the reporter," he said with a smile in his voice. "And I couldn't agree more." Maya smiled, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. "It's not about what they think of us. It's about what we know we're doing. And we're doing the right thing." As the weeks passed, the foundation's work continued to grow, and the resistance began to fade. Maya and the billionaire had proven that no matter how powerful the opposition, they could not be stopped. Together, they had found strength in their unity and a purpose greater than themselves. They were no longer just fighting for change. They were creating it, one step at a time. The foundation had grown far beyond their expectations. The momentum was undeniable now, and more people than ever were being helped. Maya and the billionaire had become synonymous with change. As they stood side by side, it was clear that their work was far from over. Yet, as much progress as they had made, they found themselves facing a new reality. The pressure had mounted, and the stakes had grown higher. The media had begun to take a deeper interest in their work, and with that came scrutiny. People were questioning their methods, accusing them of being too radical, too disruptive. One evening, as Maya sat at her desk, reading through the latest media reports, she couldn't shake the feeling that the world was watching them more closely than ever before. She knew it was a double-edged sword. The more they succeeded, the more they threatened the systems in place, and the more resistance they faced. Her phone rang, and she answered to hear the familiar voice of the billionaire on the other end. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, his tone serious. "I've been reading the reports, and I think it's time we have a strategy meeting." Maya nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I agree. The pressure is building. People are starting to notice how much we've done, and that's a good thing, but I think it's also making them nervous." The billionaire was silent for a moment. "Exactly. The last thing we need is to be misunderstood or misrepresented. We need to stay focused and stay true to our mission, but we also need to be strategic in how we handle this attention." Maya stood up, pacing the room as she thought about the weight of his words. "We can't back down now. The foundation has grown too big, and it's helped too many people. But how do we make sure that the message we're sending is the right one?" The billionaire's voice was steady. "We do what we've always done, stick to the truth. Our work speaks for itself. We're not asking for anyone's approval. We're simply doing what's right." Maya took a deep breath, her mind racing. "Right. But we need a plan to combat the negative press and make sure people see the real impact we're making." "We can do that," the billionaire replied. "We'll bring in experts, more people who believe in what we're doing, and we'll have a campaign to highlight the success stories, the real lives we've changed." Maya felt a sense of clarity settle over her. "Okay, that sounds like a good place to start. Let's organize a team, get the stories out there, and keep pushing forward. The work isn't finished yet." As they hung up, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was daunting, but she knew they had the strength to face it. Together, they had built something that was changing the world, and no matter how difficult the challenges were, they couldn't stop now. The next few weeks were intense. Maya and the billionaire worked tirelessly to put their plan into action. They launched a campaign to amplify the voices of those who had been helped by the foundation, sharing personal stories of transformation and triumph. They also worked behind the scenes to strengthen their connections with influential supporters, securing more partnerships and raising additional funds to ensure the foundation could continue its work. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The negative media coverage began to wane as more and more people began to see the positive impact of their efforts. The foundation continued to grow, and with it, the belief that true change was possible. In a private moment, after a long day of meetings and calls, the billionaire sat with Maya in his office. He looked at her, his eyes filled with pride. "We've done it," he said quietly. "We've weathered the storm, and we're stronger because of it." Maya smiled, exhaustion in her eyes but determination in her heart. "We're just getting started." They both knew the road ahead would be filled with obstacles, but they had come this far, and they were willing to go the distance. The foundation was not just a project, it had become a movement. And with that, they were ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together, they could change the world. The journey that Maya and the billionaire had embarked on had come full circle. What started as a small idea had blossomed into a movement that reached far beyond their expectations. Their foundation, now a beacon of hope for so many, had accomplished things that no one, not even they, had imagined possible. The resistance they had faced was still there, but it no longer had the power to deter them. They had proven that change was not just possible, but inevitable. As the years passed, their work continued to inspire others. Maya and the billionaire had built a legacy that wasn't defined by wealth or power, but by the lives they had changed, the systems they had challenged, and the impact they had made in their community and beyond. One afternoon, as they stood together at the grand opening of a new community center funded by their foundation, the billionaire turned to Maya with a sense of quiet pride. "Look at this," he said, his voice filled with awe. "This is what we've done. This is what we've built together." Maya looked around at the bustling crowd, the smiles on the faces of the people who would benefit from the new resources, the opportunities that were now available to them. "We couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "You took a chance on me when no one else would. You believed in this, in what we were trying to do." The billionaire smiled, a genuine smile that reflected the change that had taken place within him. "We believed in each other, and that's what made all the difference." As the day wore on and the celebration continued, Maya took a moment to step outside, feeling the weight of everything they had accomplished. The city skyline stretched before her, a symbol of how far they had come. She thought back to the days when she had been uncertain, unsure if they could ever make a real impact. But now, standing here, seeing the difference they had made, she knew they had changed everything. The challenges they had faced, the media scrutiny, the resistance from the powerful, the long nights and sleepless days, had all been worth it. They had built something that was more than just a foundation. They had built a movement. And now, with the foundation solidly established, Maya knew that it was time to take things even further. There were still millions of people out there who needed help, people who had been forgotten by the system. But now, with the resources they had built and the support of so many others, Maya and the billionaire could do more than ever before. The next step was clear. It was time to take the fight for justice, for equality, for opportunity, to a national level. Maya returned to the celebration, her heart full of purpose. The billionaire joined her, and together, they spoke to the crowd, thanking them for their support, for their belief in the mission. But as Maya looked out at the faces in the crowd, she knew the real work was just beginning. The fight for a better world would never truly end. But as long as she and the billionaire stood together, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The foundation was just the beginning. Together, they would continue to break down the walls that divided people and build a future where everyone, no matter their background, could have the opportunity to succeed. As they looked forward to the future, both Maya and the billionaire knew one thing for sure. This was their purpose. And they would not stop until they had changed the world for good.